the Sustainability Management Master's Program, you're answering one simple question. Do you care about your future generation? If you care about your kids, their grandkids, then you care about sustainability. And a sustainability manager is someone who has the tools to make people understand how they can contribute towards developing a sustainable world. We have both part-time and full-time students. Our curriculum is 30 hours. Instead of thesis, we have a research project course and a seminar course which provides them with the kind of research background they will need to be successful in their job. But at the same time, sustainability is not always everything about environment. It also relates to the business. They will take a sustainable business strategies course. They will take a project management course. Most of these courses are going to be taught by industry people, the people who are doing sustainability on a daily basis as a part of their job. Any organization that has a large number of employees and has a physical infrastructure, they will have to have a sustainability office. If you have the passion to develop and maintain a sustainable world, come to us and we will help you shape your passion into a career which will create an impact.
Speaker today, Nicole Miller. Nicole is a principal of M&M Consulting. She specializes in media development, digital and print publishing, brand strategy, content creation, clean energy, and sustainability education for business and general audiences. Nicole is a member of the Newark Environmental Commission, advising the mayor and the city council on sustainability issues. She's also the chair of the Newark Green Team, co-chair of Newark DIG, which stands for Doing Infrastructure Green, co-chair of the Jersey Works Waterworks Steering Committee, vice chair of the New Jersey Progressive Equitable Energy Coalition, and a member of Clean Energy Action Now and Clean Energy Jobs Coalitions. Nicole has a BA from the University of Washington and an MS from Pace University. Today, Nicole will talk about mitigating effects of climate change on environmental justice communities. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for taking the time out of your Tuesday evening. And I'll just go ahead and hit one of the buttons that makes it go. Yes, okay. Yes, as Professor Schaefer said, my name is Nicole Miller. I'm principal consultant of M&M Consulting. I wear also several other hats. And I really do want to start the conversation this evening talking about environmental justice communities. In New Jersey, they're generally referred to as overburdened communities. That's what the Department of Environmental Protection uses the label as. And really, what are we talking about? We're often talking about Black, Brown, or Indigenous populations in both urban and rural settings, where there may be decades of racist policies that have placed Black, Brown, Indigenous communities in the areas of greatest environmental harm and closest to dangerous or toxic sites. Environmental justice communities often have high numbers of vulnerable populations, including senior citizens, children, and medically infirm persons. EJ communities are often filled with people who rent their homes or who own their homes on fixed incomes, and therefore can make few, if any, changes to update the internal or external structure of those properties. These individuals and families often have few options in emergency situations, both for evacuation as well as for extreme heat or flooding. And as of 2020, there were 1,600 affordable housing units subject to at least one flood per year. So imagine being in an affordable housing unit and you have no other options, very little financial liquidity, and you're every year subjected to some sort of flood. And that number is expected to rise to over almost 7,000 affordable housing units by 2050. But really, even that, what does it mean? Obviously, we have the centers of industry, affordable housing, lots of toxicity. It's hard to imagine that. I live in Newark, New Jersey. And an important element is that we acknowledge the cumulative sets of problems within the community. I'm going to show you a few maps from the environmental resources inventory that we finalized in 2021. Obviously, this is a living document, so some of these will change, but they're relevant for our conversation this evening. Those environmental justice communities that we're talking about, they suffer from stronger storms, extreme temperatures, the cumulative and health impacts, poorly managed infrastructure, a decade of industrial toxicity, exclusionary land use policies, and social stigma and prejudice. So what we're looking at here is an outline of the city of Newark. On this side of your screen, you'll see on the east side here, obviously, there's the Passaic River, which is the eastern boundary there, and you'll see the island of Manhattan. To the west, those are our Essex County neighbors that are more affluent in Essex County, and that's actually closer to the area that I live. The dark purple area there to the south is a lot of the airport and the port area, which, as you can see, has very high air cancer toxics risks. And just hold this image in your mind. There's going to be a few layers on top of that. And you can also see the yellow here. We have Highway 280. We have the Garden State Parkway. We have 78, the New Jersey Turnpike, and Highways 1 and 9, of course, and Highway 22. There are an innumerable number of highways running through the city of Newark alone. And that places Newark in an important position. Newark is the largest city in the state of New Jersey by population, and it's also a hub of commerce. We have an international airport. We have the second largest port in the country, the largest on the East Coast. We have countless truck and rail lines. Billions of dollars of commerce go through this city regularly. And as a result, there are lots of transportation lines in and out, goods and other sort of transit are also nexus here in this area. And as a result, the air quality, less than great. But on top of that, we also have regional waste facilities. So if you look here, we have waste and recycling facilities. If you'll notice the clustering of where they are here down in this area. These are the red are recycling facilities, the orange are waste facilities, and we have, of course, Covanta, our waste to energy incinerator, which burns trash for our region, not just for the city of New Jersey, but for it's a regional waste incinerator. So it burns trash for other counties in New Jersey, as well as some of the trash from Lower Manhattan as well. And as a result, our fine particulate matter, PM 2.5, you see the concentrations here. Even the lighter yellow are pretty bad, but the dark red the dark purple are really in the highest percentile. We're talking about 58th, 70th percentile for those the darker percentages there. Then we have land and surface temperature. Newark was, I think, in 2021, a U.S. News and World Report listed Newark as the second worst heat island, urban heat island effect in the country after New Orleans. And as you see here, the heat here, we have temperatures that spike up to over 106 degrees Fahrenheit. As Landsat imagery taken on July 6th, 2020 here. This is as compared to, as I mentioned, to the west, some of our neighbors, South Orange, which is for me just a few blocks west there, much cooler temperatures immediately, and that's just because of a lack of a lack of tree canopy cover, as well as a high imperviousness, which is of course our roofs and our pavements, paved roads and streets and sidewalks, parking lots, etc. In addition to that, Newark has toxicity. You know, we have a host of environmental burdens, as I mentioned, toxic international airport, all of those things suffer from urban heat island effect and other hazards contributing to poor health, as well as contaminated sites, such as remediation ongoing. There's remediation permit action has not been shown. Those are the purple sites. We have known contaminated sites. Formal evaluation. Newark has 4 Superfund sites as well. In addition, a town like Newark might be dealing with flooding issues, litter, illegal dumping, decades of groundwater toxicity from commercial enterprise and sewer overflows, which we'll talk about more a little bit later as well. As you see here in this particular map, FEMA flood hazards, you can see that a good portion of our lower east ward here and part of the south ward is in a 100 or 500 year flood hazard, which you might say 100, 500. These are storms that have happened in the within the last decade. And the floodway here includes, of course, up in the North Ward there, Branch Brook Park, and all along the Passaic River, as well as in the South Ward here along Weequahic Park as well. Then, of course, we have our CSO problem, which again, I'll mention the combined sewer overflow outfalls that we have here are leading to our drainage districts, and our outfalls means that toxic water in as little rain as 10 minutes might lead to a combined sewer overflow event. And that ends up with toxic water. Instead of going to our regional water treatment facility, Passaic Valley Sewerage Commission, will end up directly into the Passaic River or the Elizabeth River, or in worst case scenarios, will back up into homes and basements as well. Or you have hazardous waste management facilities, of which there are a number. Generators, transfer facilities, transporters, treatment, storage, and disposal facilities. All of these are active or potential hazards, both for our air, water, and soil toxicity. As I mentioned, Newark has 4 Superfund sites, the Riverside Industrial Park, the Diamond Alkali Superfund, Lake Superfund site, which are both on the Passaic River, the Troy Chemical Corporation and the White Chemical Corporation are all designated EPA Superfund sites. And unfortunately, hundreds of brownfields. These are the ongoing toxicities, and this is just a portion of the maps that are available. I can give you a QR code, actually, if you do want to visit the ERI, and I'll have this available again at the end of the presentation if any of you want to capture that. But this is massive, and it's perhaps a bit overwhelming and somewhat disheartening. But unfortunately, this is just a small sampling of these issues. This is an immediate emergent crisis, like the lead and drinking water issue. They're not top of mind for a majority of the leaders or the residents in these towns. Unfortunately, despite the industrial waste, the pollution, et cetera, the social and economic justice concerns of education, employment, the cost of living, public safety are generally the major issues worrying both elected officials and the residents who are trying to live their everyday lives. So what does it take to move into solutions? What does it take to transform a city? And so I do want folks to take a moment to take in this slide. I made this slide deliberately overwhelming because it's almost like drinking from a fire hose. Every time an environmental advocate or community advocate steps up to the plate and says, oh, how can we tackle one element? we're constantly pulling additional and related strings. There are no silos in this work. So the work that's connected to land use is connected to energy, is connected to criminal justice, is connected to tree canopy, is connected to flooding, et cetera. All of these elements are connected to each other. And so when we're discussing the change that needs to happen, we really need to be thinking in a multiplicity of ways, preventing unintended consequences and thinking about the people who are going to be affected, who's going to be left behind, et cetera. So when you have the result of polluted air, water, land, communities burdened with poor health effects, learning and behavioral disorders as a result, economic stagnation, vulnerability to environmental harms like climate change, et cetera. The tools and resources that you need in environmental justice communities to adapt and respond include, of course, energy efficiency measures, distributed energy networks, stormwater infrastructure, including green and gray water infrastructure, water reuse and reclamation, which we do little of here in New Jersey. We have, I think, I call it an abundance mindset, where we're still not using our water as the resource that it is, and making sure that we're capturing fresh water, reusing it, reclaiming it, and putting those systems into place where areas that are more water scarce are doing this as a matter of course. So how are these options characterized in environmental justice communities? What does that really look like, and what does change look like? So this is a change timeline. This is totally something I created. Like it's not necessarily official anywhere, but first, of course, we have to identify the need, and we gather our partners together, of course, community and academic, government and business stakeholders, of course, residents in any particular area. Legislation and or policy need to be enacted. Sometimes there might be legislation that's on the books that is not active and engaged policy. And so we have to, of course, educate our elected officials and engage our municipal officers to enforce policies. And then when we're implementing new policies, of course, we need municipal buy-in, because if the town or the leaders in any particular area are not involved heavily in that process, they are not going to be able to push forward the policy change, the awareness and outreach that's necessary. Then, of course, the education and awareness for general public audiences. As I mentioned, these people have a lot of things that they're dealing with already. And so incorporating a new change or something that is may be seen as an onerous or some sort of unneeded regulation, we really have to make it clear to people the reason for these changes and the benefits to the communities as well. So then when you come to full adoption, of course, you have your majority participation and buy-in, and you assume enforcement, right? There's always a carrot and a stick, hopefully. And so when we're talking about change, sometimes people need both. We're talking about developers, even legislators, people who are the beneficiaries of the status quo will often push back against that. And we'll, again, talk about that more later. Excuse me. So how can under-resourced communities best evaluate their choices and fund upgrades and installation? And fund upgrades and installations. So obviously, the first thing is to identify problems and solutions. I've gone through a fair amount already, so I do want to hone in a bit on water. As Dr. Sakar mentioned earlier, I have a few different hats that I wear. I'm co-chair of Newark DIG and chair of the Newark Green Team and co-chair of Jersey Waterworks Steering Committee. And over the years where I've been working in water infrastructure and water equity, there have been some things that have been unfortunately made quite plain. And the first is that New Jersey has multiple areas of vulnerability when it comes to water. And I'm going to focus actually on flooding, not so much drinking water, which is, you'd have to give me a whole nother hour for drinking water. So I'm just going to focus on stormwater and sort of clean water, which is what we call the water that comes out of the home as opposed to the water that goes in. But Just in New Jersey alone, in the last 100 years, the state has experienced over 18 inches of sea level rise to date. Not, oh, we're projecting it. This has already happened. And while the seas are rising, New Jersey's land is also sinking. And on top of that, it's obviously a heavily urbanized state, and development has exacerbated the problems, having more people living closer to all those most vulnerable areas, shorelines, riverbanks, streams, as well as, of course, in the 21 combined sewer system municipalities in the state. Up to 80% of New Jersey residents live in flood-prone coastal areas, and environmental justice communities are on track to bear the greatest burden from climate change. Here's an image actually from Hurricane Sandy, and studies have shown that perhaps as many as 100,000 people were exposed to Sandy-related flooding, more than would have been without the measured sea level rise, so without those 18 inches of sea level rise. And it's expected that that will worsen before 2050. So what's causing sea level rise? Thermal expansion. Y'all are all science, Stevens Institute folks. So you know that thermal expansion, as the oceans get warmer, the water takes up more space. Additionally, we have melting fresh water from glaciers and ice caps. In New Jersey, we also have induction. The land is sinking at the same time. And of course, development in areas that are reliant on aquifers. So the water that's underground, they'll pull out that water for drinking and other uses, and that will cause the ground to sink even more, making those areas even more vulnerable. If you see here at the bottom of the screen, this is after Hurricane Ida along the Jersey Shore. These homes are not normally in the middle of the ocean. This is a direct result of sort of catastrophic sea level rise that we're already experiencing. And it's unfortunate. I have more information on flooding as well, but it's projected that dry, sunny day flooding will increase in these coastal areas in a much more common way. Right now, sunny day flooding happens occasionally, but it will happen much more frequently as we get closer to the middle of the century. And but I do want to pull back from the coast a little bit. Let's go back to Newark, which is sort of on the bay, but is much more urban and has an issue that few people understand or recognize, which is, of course, a combined sewer overflow. And to I can try to do this fairly quickly, but a combined sewer overflow is when your home wastewater, your toilets, your sinks, washing machine, etc., and the water that falls on the street, either in rain or snow melt, goes into the same large pipe, and then goes ideally to the wastewater treatment facility. As I mentioned, in Newark, our wastewater treatment facility is a regional facility, Passaic Valley Sewerage Commission, which has 48 hydraulically connected communities for which they treat wastewater. And on a dry day, the water goes, you flush the toilet or you run the sink, that water goes to the wastewater treatment facility. It's then processed and released into Newark Bay. When even a small storm happens, 10 minutes or so, it will overwhelm the system. And then as you see here in the display, there's like a little lip and it will overwhelm that. The water gets too high and it's an outfall. It's sort of a release pipe. It releases some of the pressure, so there's not too much water heading to the wastewater treatment facility. And that outfall goes directly into the Passaic River in Newark or the Elizabeth River. So right now, stormwater is a burden. It's a burden to municipalities, but it can and should be considered a resource when properly captured and filtered. What are some of our options, with regard to managing sea level rise and stormwater? Obviously, there's managed retreat. So here, this image, the large image, is from Bloomfield, and they have had some wetlands restoration, taking some of the area there that in an area that regularly flooded homes and created a green infrastructure solution to capture some of that water that had been a menace and now created in an area you can't see in the image. There's a whole park there. There's an entire situation. This is I want to say Lionsgate Park in Bloomfield. You can visit it. It's here in New Jersey. And then we have an aerial view over here to the left of the image. That's actually a relocated what is it? Switching station, PSENG switching station. Sorry, I had a little brain hiccup there. This is an aerial view of a PSENG switching station, which was actually rather hotly contested. But the switching station had been at a low-lying area. And so in managed retreat, what you do basically is you will move some of your important infrastructure to higher ground. And so that's what this is right here. There's also resiliency and adaptation. You have a home that may be inundated by the ocean, so you just build it up higher. I think that this probably has limited application. There's only so high you could build a home, I guess. And then, of course, building a seawall, which is problematic for some folks, especially who move to these areas specifically to have that beautiful coastal view, and instead they have a large seawall. There's, of course, mitigation strategies such as green infrastructure, which is one of my favorite. Bioswales and rain gardens, increasing the tree canopy, having planter boxes and permeable pavement, green roofs, green streets, which are sort of a combination of different efforts, both on public and private property. It's important because there's a variable cost. So on the screen right now, you have permeable pavement and you have green roofs. Both green infrastructure, they both have their place and they both have their uses. They all have their maintenance. Don't let anybody tell you that there is any infrastructure that you can place that will not have a maintenance component. And so maintenance should always be built into any infrastructure project, both gray or green or any other kind as well. But these have wildly different costs. And so, excuse me. And so when we're talking about the value that you might get placing a green roof, you have to assess, of course, the strength of the roof, the use of the roof, what are the material, what are the systems that you have on it with regard to HVAC and other systems, the age of the roof and how much load it can carry, because, you know, having vegetation with waterlogged vegetation can be relatively heavy, versus permeable pavement. If you have something where it just does need to be maintained, obviously, but there might be options where this can go in and help to alleviate some of the problem, increase infiltration, and make some of this area less impervious. Then, of course, we have great infrastructure, which are human-made systems that are meant to hold or redirect stormwater, tunnels, tanks, storage tanks, etc. And these are important component, especially in an urbanized area where we have limited space. There's limited space to be able to take a large area and turn it into wetlands or have reclaimed opportunities. And so those are some of the water solutions that we might have, right? Additionally, of course, we have lots of potential land opportunities. And so reclaiming our available space. As I mentioned earlier, there's more than 700 brownfield sites in Newark. And if we can remediate some of those sites, clear out those toxic soils, make those into urban parks or into other kinds of areas of stormwater capture, those are important benefits that we might realize as well. This is an example of brownfield reclamation down in Newark. Some of you may recognize it if you've been in Newark. We call it the Orange Sticks. And this is Riverfront Park, which was a brownfield site. But if you can spend the initial capital through a combination of public and private enterprise, then you can ultimately get benefit out of that, increasing local tax revenue and adjacent residential property, making areas that had been a blight onto the community active. again, providing jobs, cleaning up industrial and economic opportunities, et cetera. So environmental justice is environmental justice. When we think about that, what does it really mean? Excuse me. Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
I need to call us later.
Excuse me. Apologies for that. When we talk about environmental justice, what does that really mean? So we've talked about a few different opportunities, and now here are some of the obstacles. Covanta, the waste treatment facility that I mentioned, that is an incinerator. They call it a waste to energy facility. It's an incinerator. It burns trash, and it actually gets renewable energy credits for burning that trash in the Ironbound section. And in addition to that, there's also junkyards, scrap metal facilities, waste transfer and demolition recycling, food and yard waste, commingled recycling, and municipal solid waste all contribute in this same area here in the Ironbound. And when we talk about environmental justice, the environmental justice law was signed in 2020, but the rules didn't go into effect until just last year. And Covanta has been seeking a renewal of their permit since I think 2021, and there is an executive order that sort of is holding that for right now, but the environmental justice rules are not applicable to this particular case just because of timing. And so because the rules had not been in effect, even though the environmental justice law had been in effect, then Covanta is still, it's a question mark as to whether that facility will receive its permit. But the reason that it's such a problem for the people in the community is that these facilities are really not good neighbors. An Earth Justice and Ironbound Community Corporation report showed that Covanta, the one in Essex, that's the one here in Newark, was the #2 emitter of arsenic, hydrogen chloride, mercury, and nitrogen oxides, the #3 emitter of beryllium, #4 emitter of carbon tetrachloride, et cetera. And this is not isolated, of course, to Newark. Down in Camden, they're the #1 emitter of cadmium and hydrogen chloride. In Union, the #3 emitter of chromium, hydrogen chloride, and PCBs. In Warren, the #5 emitter of nickel. And in Gloucester, the #2 emitter of polycyclic and organic matter. These are not good. I say they're not good neighbors because they're actively sort of trying to subvert the rules that are keeping these neighborhoods safe. We are currently undergoing challenges to the existing environmental justice laws, and the challengers include scrap recycling industries, the engineers, labor employer of the International Union of Operating Engineers, ELEC 825, the New Jersey Business and Industry Association, and the Chemical Council of New Jersey are all challenging the environmental justice law that is meant to prevent the cumulative impacts that we saw earlier in the collection of slides from having a deleterious effect on those communities. These are the challenges. And again, I mentioned the people who have a vested interest in the status quo do not want to see that change. Now, they're not necessarily taking out an ad, even though there have been some op-eds, but they're not saying, hey, we don't want these environmental justice communities to be healthy. They're saying, oh, this is about maintaining our jobs. Where can we build them if we can't build them in the Ironbound, et cetera? And the communities themselves are saying, no, this is important for us to be able to protect the air that we breathe, to reduce the amount of toxicity that we have in our communities. In Newark, for example, 1 in 4 children have asthma, which is multiple times the state and national averages. These are the kinds of objections to the environmental justice law that we're seeing, and what's on the other side of that are community voices who are trying to protect protect their homes. And then energy. We talk about energy action. Back in 2018, the Clean Energy Act of 2018 was signed by Governor Murphy, and the goals there were to, I can read it, landmark legislation calling for the overhaul of New Jersey's clean energy systems by building sustainable infrastructure in order to fight climate change and reduce carbon emissions, which will in turn create well-paying jobs, grow the state's economy, and improve public health while ensuring a cleaner environment for current and future residents. As part of the statewide undertaking, the Clean Energy Act required New Jersey's investor-owned gas and electric utility companies to reduce their customers' use of gas and electricity by set percentages over time. To help reach these targets, the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities, that's the BPU, approved a comprehensive suite of efficiency programs that would transition the state to some of the highest energy savings in the country. And so that's the plan right now. We're currently in the second set of 3 years. That's a triennium. So we're in just beginning the triennium 2 process to determine these programs. And from the public filings that we've seen from some of the utilities are, in some cases, especially some of the cases where there might be an electric and gas utility that have shared services, but for our mainly gas utilities, again, they have a vested interest in maintaining the status quo. And so they're currently actively trying to maintain their business structure, not to achieve those goals of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, carbon emissions, and making sure that people have affordable transition into the clean energy economy. And so these are the things that we need people to be staying abreast of, to stay focused on. This is happening currently right now. The hearings are currently happening. And so when the gas and electric utilities have a public engagement opportunity, for example, and they give just a few days notice and they have 2 events back to back, that's a clear indication that they're not trying to have a public conversation about this. Another example is the Clean Energy Equity Act, which unfortunately is not yet law, but the last movement was, I think, in 2020. But it was designed to help low-income residents benefit from solar storage and energy efficiency savings and job creation. The Clean Energy Equity Act, which did pass the Senate, but has not moved in. I do not know if it's been reintroduced yet, but focused on cost savings, job training, and local investment. The bill planned to establish an Office of Clean Energy Equity, and NJBPU, in advance of the bill passing, started the office as well, and has submitted some funding for communities to have clean energy, community energy plan grants, and they have implementation funding that is due this year. The Senate bill has yet to be passed. But I've heard actual arguments to avoid or delay positive climate action, including recycled materials cost more than virgin materials. Gas unions have been negotiating good contracts for their workers for the better part of a century, and clean energy doesn't have as good a track record negotiating for workers, et cetera. These are the kinds of barriers that we see to some of the clean energy action that we would like to see, as well as the environmental justice and these actions on the ground. And so what it really takes when we're mitigating the effects of climate change in our environmental justice communities is, of course, being aware, but then also being very present on the ground and making sure that we have all engaged stakeholders who are working together to come to solutions. So as I mentioned, I'll have the environmental resources inventory here as well for you to take a look at. And thank you for your time.
All right. That was a packed presentation, Nicole. Like, brought up a lot of issues, but excellent.